Okay, it's 6:30, so let's call the meeting to order, please, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Union City Community School Board's meeting. Our meeting agenda is available for you to follow. The expectation for our board meeting is to follow this agenda closely. We operate under the Open Meetings Act and utilize Robert's Rules of Order to govern our discussion and decision-making process. There is an opportunity for public comment during our set agenda. We welcome the public to express their opinions during this time of our agenda. If there are any questions about the agenda or the board meeting process, please seek out one of the board members for clarification. Before I go to addition and deletion of items, I just want to remind everyone that we need to use our speaking out voices, because I did get some feedback that people can't hear us, even people in the audience. So we need to make sure that we use projecting, okay? Otherwise, we'll bring our microphones back. Is there any addition or deletion of items to the agenda? No? Moving on. This is the time to have the second hearing on sex education standards. And those standards have been presented. They're available. As an item that you could see on the agenda. I believe it's also been available through the school. Do you have anything else that you need to say about it?
I don't believe so. We'll have time to discuss in the active part of the meeting.
During the action process, that's when we'll discuss it here at the board level. So then we'll move on to the public hearing of proposed changes on sex education standards. This is a section of the meeting in which the public may make comments or share their opinions about the proposed sex education standards, changes, or agenda items. We ask you to limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes per person to allow others the opportunity to speak. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to your concerns. It is not board practice to act on the concerns voiced during this, during this meeting to allow for the board to do further research. Do we have anyone that would like to speak at this time?
Good evening. My name is Don Mason, and I've been part of this community since November 2017, and I've also served on the Sex Education Advisory Board for the past 3 years. I speak against adopting the sex education standards that have been brought this evening. I speak in support of continuing to use the national standards for sex education for the next cycle of curriculum development, as this district has done for the past several cycles. The best tool that we can offer to our children in a hypersexualized environment like the United States these days is a sex ed curriculum that establishes healthy discussions about the natural process of human behavior related to sex. We can't sanitize sex education by selectively banning certain conversations that may or may not occur in our students' classrooms. As I review the national standards and the topics proposed to be canceled, I recognize that it is a detriment to our children to withhold information that can contribute to their sexual health and personal well-being. Whether or not they have been redlined by the administrative team, there are gay and gender non-binary people throughout our communities, our faith homes, and our schools. Banning conversations about homosexuality in sex ed class and directing teachers to ignore the topic will not change that fact. Similarly, accurately naming genitalia with standardized terms of address appropriately desexualizes conversations about anatomy and provides healthy vocabulary for children and youth to describe their body and life experiences. These are just two examples of the things that have been chosen to not teach. While assurances have been made by the superintendent that there will be no repercussions when these subjects are addressed in response to student questions, I am not reassured. Much of this action seems to have been indicated by a single question and response in sex ed class related to how to maintain a friendship with someone who is considering coming out as gay. This is an important conversation to continue because there are many degrees of complexity in such a condition. There is no one wrong or right answer. The only wrong answer I can think of is we can't talk about that, which is the position which negating the national sex education policy may establish. I would hate to see teachers punished or reassigned because they provided appropriate and accurate instruction about a student question. We all may have very different ideas about what needs to be covered in our future sex ed classes, and it may make us uncomfortable to come to terms with the fact that not everyone agrees with our worldview. That does not give us the right or responsibility to exclude people with different attitudes and different ways of accepting the gender diversity that occurs in the human world. Our teachers have a difficult enough task as it is. Let's not make it more difficult by banning healthy educational discussions. In closing, I urge the board to continue to utilize the current national sex education standards for their next curriculum cycle and not adopt the proposal that has been received by the board this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do you have any other comments at this time? Moving on, we will move on to our consent agenda. And I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Support.
Discussion?
No. Usually financials done at the what's this time, so I was surprised.
Okay.
I see it later.
Yes. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Move on to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence this evening? All right. And next we have a presentation. Richard Maples, high school history teacher, will report on the trip to Washington, D.C., which the students visited in June. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Let me pull up the presentation on that. So you probably want to turn around so you get a view of that.
You don't want to stare at you?
What's that?
You don't want to stare at you?
Well, you can stare at me, but I got a feeling that's going to be a whole more attractive than looking at me. Just going with that.
Oh,
But that's no, look at those people either. Yeah. Okay, so in June of this year, we took 46 students and 7 adults on a trip down to Washington, D.C. We left here at the school at 6:45 in the morning. We were supposed to leave at 6:15, but one of the students thought we were leaving the following day. So the students were able to get a hold of him, and it was a mad dash. I don't think he had clean clothes. I think he just brought clothes along. So we were able to get on the road then. Our first stop was at the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. One of the things here in the visitor center is you can actually listen to there's 4 messages that were left on answering machines from people that were on the planes. And the messages are like, our plane has been hijacked, we're going to take over the plane, or attempt to, and it's very haunting as you're listening to these words from individuals that in a matter of minutes are going to be dead. And so they had all made calls from, if you were on a flight back in the 90s, they had the phones right in in the back of the seat in front of you. So those were messages that were left on answering machines at home. And both myself and a number of other students commented that was a little difficult to listen to. In here as well, there is the Tower of Voices. I did not put up a picture of that, but it is a 90-foot tall structure, and there are wind chimes in there. And the wind chimes are indicative of each one of the people that was on the plane there. And so if you have wind of 10 miles an hour or more, it actually makes a very nice sound. Anything less than 10 miles an hour actually doesn't move at all. Once in DC, we were able to stop outside of Ford's Theater and the Peterson House. I found out a week before we left that Ford's Theater was closed for renovation. So we could not go inside and see Ford's Theater. We did step outside here. This was just around the corner from a place where we ate supper. So the kids got to see the outside of Ford's Theater and the Peterson House, which is right across the street where Lincoln passed away. And one of the things they at the Peterson House, they tell you that that's the bed that Lincoln died in. Well, they're not right, because that bed is actually at a museum in Chicago, Illinois. And I pointed it out, and when I was there, I pulled it up and I pointed out, says, no, you're actually wrong, and the Park Service says, we stand corrected.
Good job.
Wow. All right. We made a stop here at the White House. This was just a photo. This was just a photo stop here. So, as you know, that Pennsylvania Ave right in front of the White House is actually closed to vehicular traffic, which is actually kind of nice. So the kids walked around. They got some beautiful shots of the White House here. And this is putting your cell phone through the bars very carefully and then taking an image. I told the kids, be careful, because if it goes too far in there, it's property of the Secret Service. Fortunately, none of the kids dropped their cell phones. Next, we went to the Smithsonian Institute. Now, we did go to the Natural History Museum and the American History Museum. In the Natural History Museum, I made sure that the kids went up and saw the Hope Diamond, which is on display on the second floor, and a number of other articles in there. One complaint from the parents was we didn't spend enough time there, and the kids, I think, had had their fill after about 45 minutes. So, differing feelings here. After this, we stopped at the American Holocaust Museum here. This was, to say the least, was a difficult visit. As you walk in, they segregate you into groups, and you go into an elevator, and then you start at where the Holocaust begins with the anti-Semitic rulings that were laid down through Kristallnacht and moving forward all the way through the Holocaust. As you can see, here are two of the ovens. I believe these were taken from Auschwitz. In another section of the museum, they have a set of bunk beds that was taken from one of the internment camps as well. This museum was difficult, to say the least. I've been in there twice, and both times it was difficult. And just to see everything in there, and we had 2 hours there, but that was not long enough to do it justice. So we had to hurry people out of there because we had a few other stops we needed to make. We did stop at the National Archives. This was by request of some of the individuals on the trip. They wanted to see the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So we went in there minus all cell phones, because you cannot take them in there to take pictures. And it's not because they'll flash on your phone, it's because the radio waves which your phone puts out may degrade the paper that the documents are actually on. Once we were there, I took a few minutes to wander around the building, and it was very neat to see both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. One floor below that was a copy of the Magna Carta. And I grabbed a couple of students, and I'm like, okay, those documents are cool. This one's even neater because it's like 800 years old. And so that was kind of neat to be able to see all of those three documents. I had wanted to see a Gutenberg Bible, which the U.S. does have, but it was not on display at the archives at that point. After this, since we could not get into Ford's Theater, they did us one better, and we got to go down to Mount Vernon, the Washington estate. That's about 45 minutes south of where we were at, where we were staying in D.C., and so we went down there and toured George Washington's plantation here. And as you can see in the photo on the left, we were getting a lot of smoke from the Canadian wildfires, hence the haze there. And this is a group of the students outside of Mount Vernon here. Following this, we went to the U.S. Congress, and that is the group of students outside of Congress. We got to go around behind Congress, and we went into the visitor center. We did not go into the actual House of Congress, partially because sometimes you have to wait a long time, and sometimes if you're not there spot on at the right time, you're passed over. The kids did go into the visitor center, so they actually were inside the building. Most of the kids enjoyed that, and here on the back side, you can see the renovations that are going on outside of the Capitol building here. Some of the kids want to say, is that from the January 6th, right? No, this actually has been going on. This renovation was here planned before that. So this was a meaningful visit for the kids because Congress actually was in session at that point in time. And when they were going to take a vote on the other side of the Capitol building, we had to clear out of there. We could not be standing in this lane here while they were actually taking a vote. And I knew nothing of this until the tour guide said, yeah, we have to move off of this area right here. So that was interesting to say the least. The kids got to go to the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial. All of these things here on the Washington Mall. One thing, when we went to the Lincoln Memorial, you'll never get a shot like that because there's too many people around it. And I told the kids of importance, you need to go up to the steps halfway up and look on one of the stones there is etched in there, I have a dream. And when my American students learned, this is where MLK stood and gave his speech. And so I said, you need to go up there and find that exact location. And it's probably one of the most crowded places there on the Lincoln Memorial where, because everybody wants to go up there and touch the stone there. The World War II Memorial is at the opposite end. It is situated between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. And this is best done in the evening. It is lit up very well. Very interesting display. As you can see, there are markers for all the 50 states as well as the U.S. territories. And so they bring this location with the fountains here, and the marker says that you are allowed to wade into the fountain. That is permissible, and so a few students did venture in there. There appears to be a large crop of ducks that has made that their home. And for our last, we did go to Arlington and saw the changing of the guard as well, and we stopped by the USS Maine Memorial there, where we had explained the idea of this blew up in Havana Harbor and we blame Spain for it. We don't really know what caused it. The last day, we got up early in the morning and we headed off to Gettysburg. This was a very meaningful stop for the students as they got to tour the battlefield. We did spend time in the museum, and they got to see the cyclorama, which takes you through the battle inside of the visitor center. The cyclorama has undergone a several $1 million upgrade, so it looks very beautiful now. It's nicely done. Here at the monument, we got a tour guide, and it's one of the Park Service members. And in talking with him and other Park Service members, the guy that did our tour was a retired lawyer. and he said it was more difficult to pass the test to be tour guide at Gettysburg than it was to pass the bar exam. And he said if you fail the Gettysburg exam twice, you don't get to take it a third time. So the guy took us around, got on the tour bus with us, and made numerous stops along the way. And he made a great job of connecting with the students. And I think the students got a wonderful appreciation about what occurred here in Gettysburg and the incredible sacrifice of the troops that were here. And then we boarded a bus for 7.5 long hours home. I didn't include pictures of that. In June of 2025, I would like to take a group of students and adults to New York City. Now, I have priced it this way. This is for a flight from Detroit to New York City. This is an itinerary that's subject to change. Most of these things would be on here, and we'd probably add a handful more things on here to go to. I chose the flight option. I do have a couple other packages that I'm looking at, but their prices are frozen until middle of October. But I think this is fairly standard for what you're going to get if you fly from Detroit to New York. The reason I chose that is it's going to give us more time in New York City, and it avoids the long bus trip home, which I think all of the students would appreciate, as well as the adults on board. There are a handful of things I would probably throw in. Something more, a little more fun to do. There's a cruise that we could take on the East River or around Manhattan Island, which would add a little bit more to the cost, but that would be one of the things I would talk to the kids about. We did fundraising for the DC trip, but very few kids showed any interest in fundraising. I had 4 kids that did any of the fundraising at all. The other kids just, they paid for it themselves or their family paid for it. My thinking is, since we have over a year to do this, to raise funds for this, a number of the kids would be interested in this. And I'd like to seek the board's approval for a trip like this in June of 2025. I would open it up to students that are currently in 8th grade through juniors that are currently juniors this year. So they would have graduated, but they could certainly go on the trip. Any questions from the board?
Looks like it was a great trip.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it, if possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we move on to our action items. Our first one is a closed session for the purpose of discussing student discipline. So I will need a motion to go into closed session. Support. Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. I'll have you step out, and we will let you know when we are ready to come back into session.
Was that? Okay, I was thinking that. Okay, so that was that 75?